What does that mean to you? What does it mean to be a good man? What does it mean to be a good brother, a son, a husband, a father, hopefully?
I was just talking to a friend about this yesterday, and we have this weird culture, especially in the health space, physical health in particular, has been chewed down to so many reductionistic mechanisms and numbers. We try to, the only questions we're allowed to ask as a society anymore are ones that end with data and numbers. Mm-hmm. And the people that are most popular, especially in the health space, are the ones who will break down study X and tell you need to be in the sauna for, Y minutes at Z temperature to release some hormone by A%. And I tried all of that stuff, and I would say my health data got way better, but I was not any more fulfilled as a human. I wasn't enjoying my life anymore. I think that if you're in abject disease state, I had a mold issue in the last couple of years we can talk about for sure, but if you otherwise are just enjoying life, I think that the most important questions to ask are not ones that you can answer with any data. There are no scientific experiments. There are no papers. There's no, capital S science that can give you the answer. They're very individual questions. And the question for me, just to bring it around to what you actually asked, what does it mean to be a good man? I think at the end of the day, what I'm starting to realize asking these questions is that these are mostly spiritual questions.
Yes.
And we used to have religions for most people that gave you at least some sort of a scaffolding in which to answer these questions. I've had now enough experiences of my own. I don't have any sort of religious beliefs per se. I don't belong to any sort of type of organized religion, even though I wish I did have that belief. I think it would make my life a lot easier. But I've had enough experiences deep in meditation, in nature, just silent with myself, using different plant medicine compounds, et cetera. And they've all kind of brought me to a singular point, which sort of is the same in all religions. There seems to be some sort of pole of morality that seems true. And I think when I stop thinking about it and I use my body and my intuition more so and tap in, I get a sense of this is right or wrong, good or bad. And I think for me right now, the question of what does it mean to be a good man is getting in touch with that part of me more than trying to think through checking a list off.
Yeah.
Feeling inside of is this, do I feel proud of the way I'm handling myself? Do I feel shame about this? Does this feel like the right or the wrong thing to do? And living from a place of internal integrity. The more I can do that, the better I feel about who I am as a person. And generally, the better my life becomes as well. And in that, I don't think it's even this is getting very woo fast, but this isn't even what I think to be derived from myself. It's almost like a universal truth that when I get out of my way from my head, my body, my brain, and my heart are a receiver to this universal truth of how to be as a human. And so for me, it's carving away all of the bullshit to be able to feel being in integrity with that or not.
Yeah, I love that. Seems to have that effect on people these days for some reason, where it gets woo really quick, like you said. But it seems to be actually what people are craving talking about. It's really interesting to see a guy like yourself do it, who oftentimes probably gets asked a whole host of questions about the successful businesses that you've built and you're going to continue to build. And you're like, yeah, that's cool. And it serves that part of my mission and wanted to impact. But also this thing is very alive for me right now. I'm curious how much of that, rediscovering that, refining that, the pull to this weird thing has informed your decision to move back to Oregon. How much has this played into the fact that you said, hey, I hope to become a father soon and we want to try for a kid and things like that? Are these evolutions pulling out of that space?
I think when you look at how society is shaping right now, there's this weird bifurcation that's happening across pretty much every single domain. And this type of stuff that I talk about, that I'm interested in, and the question that I'm asking myself, and the way that I'm even answering them, even with this first 10 minutes on this podcast, I would be laughing at myself like 10 years ago, me.
Yep.
But I was going down this path of ultra materialistic, rational, sort of nihilistic, numbers mean everything route. And I think that some people are continue to careen down that path and are very miserable, seemingly from the outside. And then some people, I think, it's like by necessity, are asking the question of like, there has to be more going on here. Like, what is actually going on? And that leads, I think, to this, again, separation from that to like this almost this different mindset. And I don't know where it's going to lead, but it does seem like there's almost like two different camps that are like forming, which is really bizarre to me. And I don't know if there's like necessarily a name for it. I generally think a lot of human behavior emerges when, again, the environment dictates that it should be there. And I think that we're at a point societally where these type of questions are regaining importance. We've deviated from them. If you look at any popular religion, these are the questions that everybody asked since the beginning of time, effectively. It was more of a science of understanding instead of a science for manipulation, which is kind of like how we do things now. And I try not to be too tribalistic about these type of things, because I think that when I do that, then I allow dogma to be able to orient what I'm doing. And so, just, again, like a very roundabout way to answer your question of, I try not to make decisions from a frame of mind and thinking, and try again to just sit in this spot of what feels appropriate intuitively, which sounds really bizarre. Again, like 10 years ago, me would have laughed hysterically at this comment. And just as an example of us locating to Oregon, we didn't feel great in Texas because we got really sick with mold, and our immune systems effectively got overactivated to the environment there. So even like the common allergens were just creating mast cell response in us to a degree, like flatline energy, feel terrible. Like we needed to get out effectively. Planning a family, like just good time to do it anyways. So my wife and I made a spreadsheet of like 15 different spots and went to go spend time in places. But when we got there, the decisions were made more around how we felt there.
Yeah.
And this was one of the last places we got here last January for just a test run. And almost immediately, both of us could just sense, almost like falling in romantic love, there's like this weird magnetic pull where like it prevents you from being in your head, being like, does this person have X, Y, or Z qualities? It's like, no. There's like some crazy chemistry and bond. I think that happens for a reason. Some people might want to, again, like look at, oh, well, these certain neurotransmitters are being secreted and it just pair bonding and whatever. And I think there's this, to some level, that doesn't happen with everybody. So why some people and other people? And I think that's the same thing with locations of like the three big areas in life of like who you're going to spend your time with, where you're going to live, and what you're going to work on. I think for me, making those decisions more intuitively has always gone the best. And when I've tried to force them intellectually, they've gone very poorly. And so that's what led us here, was just like throwing some stuff on a map of like, where could we possibly think we would want to be? And then just literally going and visiting those places and then trying to tap in and be like, what do we like? What do we feel? Like, do we feel good here? Are we excited to be here? Do we feel expansive? And get out of our head. And so the same thing about what I'm working on now is very much in that domain. We're like launching Lineage, for example. Like after I started doing farming, I didn't want to do any more online business stuff. And for some reason, this like, I feel like this thing keeps pulling at me to like work on this brand. And it's becoming more clear now, like, oh, this is like making sense how to like pull a lot of these things that I care about together in one thing, and like my past experiences. But it's been more of like when I get quiet and journal and reflect, again, when I try to get my brain out of it, these things sort of almost emerge as the obvious choice to me. And that's what I've tried to make it, not necessarily like, oh, like how am I going to decide exactly what I'm going to work on? If that makes sense.
Dude, it makes total sense. And I think if you try and wrestle with this too much at the level of the mind is when it starts to feel like it doesn't make sense. Something I say a lot is not to ignore when the body speaks for what the mind thinks. And you mentioned a couple of the probably the trap of maybe the scientific materialist lens, which is the scientism of the guys that we love and endear, the evidence-based crowd, the Hubermans, the Leigh Nortons, and the like. That's become their religion, right? If it can't be replicated in a materialistic 100%. Sense, if it cannot be propagated in the data, then it's basically you're talking out your butt. But at the same time, you're having a real lived experience as a person that has loved science and is maybe just viewing this as a different branch or a different arm of it. And I think that's really important. I think that, knowing is showing and feeling that and developing that relationship to get out of this, the monkey mind and a little bit more into the truth of what you're experiencing is hopefully what we all want at the end of the day, to trust that intuition. So I think it totally makes sense, man. I'm glad it's guiding you to do things that you feel more aligned with.